Hey, I'm JayTheDevGuy, and have you noticed how many good animators are on YouTube these days? I mean, online animation in general is kind of in a golden age right now. There's so many smash hit series like The Amazing Digital Circus or Big Top Burger or Punch Punch Forever. It seems like the list of wildly successful indie animations online just gets bigger by the month. But what I want to focus on today is 3D tubers, which I categorize as YouTubers who use fancy 3D animation, but to make more conventional YouTube videos like commentary or devlogs or comedy skits or whatever VTubers are doing. Well, jokes aside, I'm actually going to ignore VTubers for this video because, well, there's definitely some interesting things going on over there. I'm talking about creators who hand animate their avatars to make cool, YouTube-y stuff. And I want to talk to you how I spent the last 6 months becoming a better one. I hope you like the new look, by the way. And some of you might see the title and point out that I already was a 3D tuber, and that's true. I had this handmade avatar, this 3D set, and my videos were just me talking about whatever, not like a fictional series or something. But when I first started this channel, the animated segments were always, means to an end. It was good enough to get by, and they weren't terrible, but the focus of my videos was always whatever I was talking about that day, rather than the animation itself. In fact, I always thought spending time improving my animation skills seemed like a waste that could be better spent making the games I'm developing. But my attitude changed once this channel started to grow and I met a few of these other animators. Talking to so many insanely talented, driven, and just crazy creative animators, it really rekindled my love for this stuff. It seemed like everyone else was just having so much fun. And so here's how I spent the last 6 months overhauling my style to become a better 3D tuber. So when I first sat down to overhaul JayTheDevGuy, I wanted to outline what makes the styles I love work so well. What did they do that someone at my skill level could follow to overhaul myself into something really beautiful? And when it comes to 3D art, it's pretty safe to say that for me and for everyone else, the biggest inspiration in the last few years is Spider-Verse. There really hasn't been any other thing that's shifted the mindset of 3D artists half as much as these movies. Their influence has been pretty obvious in animated blockbusters for a while now, but within 3D YouTubers, Spider-Verse is basically the starting point. And this makes sense since the kids who grew up watching Spider-Verse are now old enough to be animators themselves, which I can give you a minute to process the fact that the first Spider-Verse came out 6 years ago, so kids who watched it in middle school are now in college. You can pause if you need a sec for that. But listen, I love this style as much as anyone else, so I was definitely going to be stealing the obvious stuff. The choppy frame rate, the hand-drawn 2D elements that make everything feel more handcrafted, the mishmashing of multiple art styles into one frame. These things have all been talked about to death, which doesn't mean they're not super cool, but I'm sure anyone watching this video is pretty familiar with Spider-Verse analysis at this point. So I was going to draw attention to part of the art style that I don't see talked about as much. A lot of people will say things like, every frame feels like it came right out of a comic book, which I see why they say that, but it's not really true. Spider-Verse doesn't look like a comic. It looks like Spider-Verse. These movies aren't trying to look like a comic came to life. They're just trying to feel like it did. Accuracy was never the goal. These movies are CGI, and they wear that proudly on their sleeves, while analog media has beautiful artifacts like film grain or textured paper or CRT scan lines. Digital media excels at being crisp, perfectly flat, and infinitely adjustable. Spider-Verse excels at all these. It takes what it wants from analog media, but ultimately plays to the strengths of digital art. All this to say that my first guideline was to do exactly that. Pull inspiration from tradition, but lean into the modern look. I think some of the best 3D tubers already have followed this principle, so before moving on to the next guideline, let's just admire this eye candy for a sec. I mean, content can be so cool when there's actual artists behind it, eh? My next guideline was that I wanted my style to promote playfulness. My favorite 3D tubers are constantly changing the style just for the fun of it, and it may be because most of them are brain-rotted zoomers, yes, but it doesn't mean I don't absolutely love it. In fact, speaking of brain-rotted zoomers, let's look at Pino Prime's content for a sec. He'll bounce from hand-painted backgrounds to monochromatic outlines to paper cutouts, and it's all just a joy to watch. Or Savannah XYZ's style always revolved around this lovely claymation look, but her well-designed character just fits right in with a Hades style, or a Lethal Company style, or this affront to God. When I was first designing JayTheDevGuy, there was probably no channel I studied more than funk. Every video is a masterful display of animation, video editing, stylization. This guy will overhaul his entire look for a one-off video about a manga he likes. This guy's the crown jewel of 3D tubers, and for good reason. All these artists have styles and workflows that don't just allow for creativity, but actively encourage it. So guideline number 2, again, having a style that promoted playfulness. And guideline number 3 was simple. I wanted to build off what I already had. I didn't want to throw everything I designed for JayTheDevGuy out, I just wanted to give it a nice facelift. I put a lot of thought into my character, this desk, this angry little commenter guy who represents the worst of the internet. I still like all of them. I just wanted to bring this channel up to par with the other insane artists I've seen on this platform. And now that I had a couple videos under my belt, I wanted to see how good I could make things with everything I've learned since the beginning. And so with these 3 guidelines, I set out to overhaul my art style. The first thing I wanted to improve was how I drew outlines onto my props. In my first video, I just painted the outlines directly onto the texture. It was simple, it looked okay, I guess, but being painted on had a lot of limitations. Outlines couldn't always be around the edge of an object, I couldn't animate them or dynamically change the color or do anything fun with them at all. In my later videos, I added a dynamic outline just on top of my hand-painted ones, which I don't know, it was better than nothing, but now that I've improved at Blender, it was long overdue to make my outlines fully dynamic. I did this by using Blender's line art modifier, which automatically creates outlines around and inside of an object. But instead of letting the line art modifier do all the work, I purposefully reined it in to only generate lines on the contours. I then went around my model and marked specific edges I wanted it to draw an outline on top of. And then if that's still not enough, I'll just draw the new shapes around it by hand. This was a really nice middle ground that let the computer do most of the work while still letting me add an artist's touch when I needed it. And since all my outlines were now completely within Blender, I could play with it as much as I wanted. With just a couple clicks, I could change the color, animation, or whatever I can think of with these outlines, which encouraged the playfulness I wanted. If there's one thing I've learned from the art I've made in the last year, it's that if you want your art to be fun, you need to make it as easy as possible to be creative. And my outlines being this flexible does exactly that. Once my outlines became fully dynamic, the textures of my objects just felt stiff by comparison. I still wanted some detail to be painted onto the texture, but it didn't feel alive like my outlines now did. So to fix this, I separated the detail into its own layer, and then wiggle it around at the same rhythm of the outlines. It gave the feeling of handmade imperfection, almost as if I redrew the scene every frame, without doing any more work. I later expanded on this when I was inspired by an Irrational Mango video that had an animated texture across every single prop in his scene. It made every frame feel so alive, and so after experimenting with a few different looks, I landed on this paintbrush texture that's overlaid onto everything, and also moves with the rhythm of everything else. I don't think this actually looks like I hand-painted each frame of animation, but it's a messy, crisp collage of styles that I think is just cool enough to work on its own, and I really like it. And so then to further encourage playfulness, I created all these materials in Blender using node groups, which basically means that all my objects share the same logic with each other. So if I want to make changes like swapping the paintbrush texture, or making everything one color, or adding entirely new effects, I can easily do so since every object references the same group. This is a lot like what I talked about in my components video, where coding logic in a video game in one reusable place can help foster creative thinking, and I'm really glad my animated segments now follow that principle too. After adding a few fun details like my laptop's RGB lights changing color over time, sneaking in some Easter eggs, and adding subtle post-processing effects, I'm really happy with the results. There's still a few things I want to improve, especially with my 2D elements, like me, but I can always improve that later. Because while I'm glad I took the time to push myself for this overhaul, one of the most important lessons I've learned from this YouTube channel is calling it good enough when it's good enough, so I'm happy with this for now. I had to learn a lot about Blender for this overhaul, and it was honestly one of the most rewarding experiences I've had as an artist. 3D art is so intimidating because there's so many different parts you have to learn, like modeling and texturing and materials and post-processing and more, but now that I've taken the plunge and tried to improve every part of my animation pipeline, I gotta tell you that Blender makes improvement so intuitive. Like, learning any part of Blender makes learning the rest of it easier. Everything shares the same hotkeys, like grabbing an object is the same button as grabbing a keyframe or grabbing a node. Like, for example, to do all of those paintbrush fanciness on my objects, I had to string together a bunch of nodes in my materials, which was an intimidating new corner of Blender I'd yet to learn. And at first it felt like I was learning specialized knowledge that was only helping me solve like texture-related problems. But later, when I wanted to add chromatic aberration to the edges of my screen, like similar to what Scott Pilgrim Takes Off does, I could just use the same exact nodes in a different section of Blender to make it happen. And since Blender is so well designed and it can do so many different things, it felt like learning any new aspect didn't add to my skill, it multiplied it. I firmly believe that animation is as good as it is on YouTube today because tools like Blender are well designed, extremely capable, and free. And Blender's just gonna keep getting better. They're gonna update their 2D animation tools soon, and well, it's a stereotype for 3D tubers to never shut up about Blender, so hey, I guess I really made it then, huh? In all seriousness, I want to encourage anyone who's on the fence about learning Blender or learning more about Blender to just dive in and do it, because it's so fun. And I really like my art style now. I'm having a lot of fun just animating it for this video. I had a lot of fun just talking about it with you guys. I hope you found it interesting. Please leave comments on what you think. I still read every single comment because I'm crazy. But honestly, I missed you guys. I know I haven't uploaded for a while, but I really am taking YouTube super seriously. And part of that for me is I just launched a Patreon. I plan on doing some really fun things with this Patreon, but for now I want to emphasize some of the cool stuff that's already there. For every video I've made, I recently recorded a commentary track where I go over my thought process, reveal cut content, review comments, and just have a fun time talking about my work in a way that I think anyone who likes this video would really enjoy. And there's a Discord. Listen, I know all of you know what Discord is, but before I launched my Patreon, I subscribed to a bunch of other YouTubers' Patreons and their Discords, and honestly, it's actually really fun. These dedicated fan communities are so much less toxic and spammy than the public Discords I'm used to. So I just gotta say, if you're like me and you've never gotten into Patreon or Discord before, you should really try it. I've been having a great time talking to fans and other artists, and it'd be cool to talk to you too. Patrons can also get their name in the credits, but there's also a tier that'll get you a hand-drawn profile picture from me in the credits of my next video, if you're into that sort of thing. I'll only draw stuff that's within reason, obviously, but it's worth noting that I do officially consider Sonic OCs within reason, so see you there. Thank you so much for watching. I know most of you are here for developer updates on the games I'm working on, and I promise those are still coming. You know, subscribe to see them, don't miss them. But I get so busy with my full-time job and other projects I haven't even told you about yet, so you watching me and especially supporting me on Patreon would really mean a lot to me. This is only my 4th animated video, and it's insane how much my audience has grown in that short time. I really want to make this channel a legit thing, and your support and kind words and patronage, it means more to me than I could possibly describe. This is the most fun thing I've ever done. I hope you're excited to see what's next. See you next time.